Oh boy, here we go. Berserk chapter 372. It's been a while since the last one where we saw our beloved protagonist Guts completely broken and in the fetal Yamcha position, if it wasn't very clear enough as to how broken he was given everything that had just transpired and Griffith taking Casca away. This chapter starts off from Casca's perspective, which I think was a really good idea. I think it allows for some clarity regarding the direction in which the story could go, as well as giving us some time away from Guts so that certain things can be handled off screen. Although none of the important stuff, of course, but you get what I mean. So the chapter starts off with, I think, one of my favorite pieces of illustration. I love the painting and the absolute being who dies all red, I'm going to be assuming, giving the color tone that was used for this. And I really would love to see this clean and use it as like a phone wallpaper. But it starts off with Casca's perspective of her being taken away, and throughout this chapter we don't get much of her inner thoughts, but yet when we do, this was an extremely bittersweet moment as she says he's disappearing into the distance. Guts. And so I'm very glad that this happened. I don't know if y'all remember a few years ago when I first started covering the series. In fact, there was a lot of discussion and dialogue regarding Casca not really having sentiments towards Guts and still having an attachment maybe more so towards Griffith. And it was like a really weird time, to the point where I actually felt like making a video at the time discussing her legitimate sentiments towards Guts and how, without a shadow of a doubt, her true love is for him. But before she could actually finish saying the name Guts, she blacks out, wakes up, and she says to herself, a dream. And she's quickly tended to by some of the servants in Falconia, and she's given a beautiful dress, vibrant crimson dress, which I could also assume would actually be the word to fill in the blank for the illustration earlier, the absolute being who dyes all crimson. Although I imagine that refers specifically to Griffith and the conquest that he seems he might be going on, but again, a little more on that later. But I really like the design of the dress that they gave Casca here, and also her facial expressions throughout all of this was very interesting. Casca usually being a very passionate individual, I would argue, to where the emotions are clearly on her face, and seeing her drawn in a very, what's the word I want to use? It's like sedated. She seems extremely sedated throughout all of this as they take her to different places and she gets to see how beautiful Falconia is. They talk about the Great Helix Tree and the World Twin Tree and, well, you know, whatever name they want to give it. And this next bit was really pulling at the heartstrings because despite the sedated state that she seems to be in, they bring up the Band of the Hawk and her body reacts as she starts to cry. They assume that they must frighten her when little do they know. She goes out and even plays with the children, has dinner, and throughout it all, she seems even more and more and more sedated. We get a shot of Casca then taking a bath, which I won't show for YouTube reasons. But the imagery used in the next couple pages I thought was extremely fascinating, as when she pulls some water from the tub and she looks into it, her memories are there. And so you see the water kind of spilling from her hands, and it's almost as if the memories are fading away from her, spilling out, whether that's forgetting, remembering. And then the next page we see a water droplet hit, and I thought it was really pretty seeing her again sat down in this very relaxed state, only to be awakened and remember as she lashes out, tries to run out. The guards stop her, and she even goes out to fight one of them and lands a pretty mean kick before taking the guy's blade and slicing his arm off. She tries to run away, but yet all these guards chase her down, and one can assume that she got a little bit far before she was seized and then brought back. As you see in the page, she says, "If I don't make it back, then Guts." So I think she has been aware of everything Guts has done for her throughout this time and everything he's suffered and endured. And she's very well aware of the fact that Guts might not make it if he isn't aware of the fact that she's okay, that she does care for him, that she wants to see him again. We then see her brought back to the place where she's going to be kept in Falconia as she wakes up and falls back asleep. Once again, I think to be returned in whatever sedated mindset, or if that doesn't work, then she's simply going to be kept basically as a prisoner there. We then see the Neo Band of the Hawk kneeling before Griffith, all except one, which is Zod, which I kind of want to get into that since I've been seeing a lot of discussion regarding that, but I think the choice of dialogue here, the bird now dozes peacefully in her cage. her flight over. As then Griffith says the East, and we see a very determined look on his face, one of ambition, one that we've seen many, many times with Griffith. Okay, there's a good amount to unpack here, so let's kind of get it started. The first thing I kind of addressed earlier with Casca, expressing her sentiments towards wanting to get back to Guts for all of the different reasons and things that have happened throughout the series. Incredibly bittersweet moment, but I think it was a really smart choice to get Casca's perspective here, because now both sides are made incredibly clear. We know what Guts wants, we know what Casca wants, we know the current state in which both characters are in, and the effect, the negative effect, if you will, caused by Griffith, thus sparking our hatred towards Griffith even more. As if the last 2 to 3 chapters didn't make you hate him, this one should have done it as well. Because I'm not sure if some people are aware of this, but not every single chapter can be a climax. You need to have setup for things, and all of these chapters are going to be set up, as we've been getting the resolution period for the last arc and the setup for this upcoming one, where I think a lot of pieces have been put into place that will inevitably lead to Griffith's downfall, as I think that final shot in the chapter of him determined in what seems to be further world conquest, I think will lead to so many enemies stacking up against him that it will inevitably lead to his downfall. One of the pieces in that could very possibly be Zod himself, be it that Zod doesn't really have this undying devotion to Griffith in the same sense that the other apostles do. Zod's kind of his own thing, so I definitely see him as a wild card in all of this. You have Casca now, who's currently in Falconia, and so she could do some work from the inside. You have Guts, who I think is going to have to go through a lot of things. On top of that, with the Skull Knight, that's definitely going to play a major factor in what goes down. A lot of people have been saying, major war arc, which could definitely be possible. I think we're going to have this large grand scale confrontation, as then it narrows down and we finally get the personal 1v1 Guts versus Griffith, although it very well could not just be a 1v1. Casca could definitely be involved in that as well, as I think that would be appropriate. I also really like the terminology used when describing Casca being returned to replace the bird kind of being put back in the cage. And Griffith has always been about control to a certain degree. When Guts left, look what he did. When he saw the Band of the Hawk and Casca were kind of moving on from him, at least what it felt like given the circumstances right before the eclipse, he tried to instantly take control again by forcing himself on her, be it he was physically too weak. And then when the eclipse did happen, well, we all know what Griffith did. And so this time, it's interesting to see him once again try to regain that control, be it not do it through entirely direct means, trying to make the cage all pretty and all nice, and look at this grandiose, wonderful, peaceful life, treated like a princess, if you will, but the reality is a cage is still a cage, no matter how you decorate it on the inside. And so even though the story has been pushed along, I think we've been getting a tremendous amount of setup with all of these different things, be it now inside of Falconia, outside of Falconia, and I think through the next stretch of the series, we're going to be getting a mix of course, more setups to continue pushing the story further, but as well, a bit of the payoffs to all of this stuff. It's going to be interesting to see if we continue with Casca's perspective, if we switch over maybe to Skull Knight's perspective, or if we go back to Guts' perspective. So I'm really excited for the next chapter, of course. I thought this was a really beautifully well done chapter. I love the imagery that was used regarding Casca and her memories, and so I think the studio did an amazing job, and so hats off to them. There wasn't the most amount of dialogue in this chapter again, but the dialogue that was there was great. So I have no complaints at all. I thought the artwork was great for this chapter. I absolutely loved it. So let me know your thoughts on this chapter down in the comment section below, what you think the next chapter is going to be about. And as always, this has been The Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.